Good morning, graduate students. If you would, get out your notes. I hope you're having a good day. If I go too fast, then ask the sub to pause the video. Kindly say, would you please pause that for a second? And she will. It's an easy lesson today. We'll get going in a minute as soon as you have the title down. And what's today's date, anybody? I hope it's the 7th. Okay. Here we go. First of all, I need you to know what these two terms mean. An improper fraction is a fraction whose denominator is less than or equal to the numerator. Fraction has denominator less than the numerator. Put an example or two down. 5/4. You can see the denominator, which is the bottom number, is less than the numerator. That's an improper fraction. Sometimes you can leave your answer improper, sometimes not. When you can't leave it improper, you change it to what's called a mixed number. A mixed number is a number with both a whole and fraction part. And I'm sure many of you know how to go from one form to the other. For example, anybody shout it out. What is 5/4 as a mixed number? I hope you said 1 1/4. Now, we have a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds in this class, and so if you know this, great. But if you don't know it, then today's your lucky day. You're going to learn it. All right, let's move on. Let's start with the first idea. How do you go from improper to mixed? Once in a while, in the homework, they're going to ask you to show a picture to show that you actually know what's going on here, not just memorizing some steps, but you truly understand why you do what you do. If you get that highlighted stuff down, then the first example, show. And then 8/3 is 2 2/3. All right. Now fractions involve parts. Parts of wholes. Now what that whole looks like, it could be a lot of things. It could be circles, rectangles, it could be anything. I'll use rectangles, okay? Now, this tells me here that I will be talking about 2 holes and a little more. So I'm going to draw 3 circles. Now I'm going to divide them into thirds because that's what this problem is about. And now I'm going to do a little shading. If I shaded 8 of those parts, because we're dealing with 8/3, then I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now in shading 8 of those parts, I also showed that I have 1 hole, 2 holes, and 2 of 3 parts, 2 and 2/3 left over. So that's an example of how you could show 8/3 and 2 and 2/3 are the same. Now when you convert then a improper to a mixed number, that picture kind of goes through my mind. I'm going to first divide 19 into 5 parts. If I divide the bottom into the top, get those steps down, please. Divide the bottom into the top, then I divide 5 into 19. Now we've been doing decimals, but this time we're not. We're going to deal with this differently. If I divided 19 into 5 parts, I would get 3 parts, but then I'd have 4 left over. If I divided 19 into groups of 5, I'd have 5, 10, 15, but then I have 4 little chunks left over. Now that would mean then that I have 3 full parts, then I have 4 parts left over out of a group of 5. I don't have a full group of 5 left. So you take the answer to the division problem, the remainder you put over the original denominator, the divisor, yeah? Now you might ask, do I have to show work? And the answer is no. These will be mental math problems. That's what's going on in your head. You divide the bottom into the top, and this time though the remainder goes over the divisor. So real quick practice problem. What if you had 14 thirds? All right, I hope you're saying 3 goes to 14 4 times. I then get a 12 and then subtract. I would have 2 left over. The answer is 4 2/3. Okay? Okay. Next skill. Going from the other way. Look at that. 4 2/3. Going the other way, going mixed to improper. 4 2/3 is a mixed number. We're changing it to improper. This also is a mental process. It's easy peasy. All right. So, somebody, what are the 2 steps we do to make this improper? I hope you said we multiply the whole number times the bottom. So 4 times 3 is 12, yeah? Now that is like dividing the 4 into thirds. When I divide 4 into thirds, I get 12 parts, yeah? Now I'm going to add the 2 other parts that I had. Add the top to that. Your final answer then is write it all over the denominator. So I get 14 thirds. So we're multiplying here and then add this. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 2 is 14 thirds. Easy. If you then converted these 3 mentally, it'll take you longer to write that down than it will to do the problem. All right. Pause if you need another second, but I don't know if you're sitting there waiting for me either, so let's go. So this one, I take 5 times 7, add that 1, 35 plus 1 is 36 seconds. This, I take 3 times 8, which is 24, add 5, that's 29, and it's altogether 8. This one's a little bit gross. 1 times a 101 is 101. Add 100. 101 plus 100 is 201 over 100. How we do? How we do? Good. Okay. Now let's talk some decimals. Mixed numbers and decimals. Also pretty straightforward. If you were to convert 2.0059 to a mixed number, now you've largely been doing something like this, except you didn't have a whole number part. You just had the decimal part. So the only thing new here is now that you have the 2 on the other side. But it's still the same idea. It's just use place value. It's 2, and we go to the decimal and say, what place value is this? Remember, it starts with tenths, then hundreds, then thousands, then 10,000s. So we'd say this is 2 and 59 10,000s. The decimal part you've been doing already. It's just putting a 2 in front. Definitely, no big deal. That'll be a sign, I hope. Okay, and then the one that requires work is to convert 2 7/9 to a decimal, round to 2 decimal places. This is going mixed to improper, or sorry, mixed to decimal. All right, now the 2 you can just leave off for a minute, and we'll bring it back. The 7/9, we know we make that a decimal by dividing. If we're going to round it to 2 decimal places, we need to see what the third decimal is. So I'm going to divide it to 3, and then round back to 2. 9 doesn't go into 7, but it does go into 70. 7 times. 9 times 7 is 63. I get a 7 and a 70 again. Goes in 7 times. 9 times 7 is 63. Subtract. I get a 70 again. Overall then, I get 0.777 for the fraction part. Now is where I take both of my components and come back together. I still have a 2, but now this rounds to 7/8. 2.78. All right. That is easy enough. All right. Now, if the sub would pass out the problem set 28, you'll have the rest of the class to work on it. You should have plenty of time to get it all done, or almost all done. Work hard, don't mess around, be good to the sub, and have a great weekend.